Hello, good evening. My name is Catherine and I work with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the 12 affordable rental housing units at Babcock Place in Brookline, Massachusetts. The purpose of this information session is to give a little bit of background information on the available units, and I'm also going to cover the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and also what to expect after the lottery itself. So if you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat in Zoom, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll be asking periodically throughout the presentation as well if anybody has questions. So you were muted when you came into this session, so that's just to minimize any noise, but you are welcome to go ahead and ask questions as they come up. So this is a live session. It's being recorded. It's going to be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel. So it's going to be available after tonight if anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight wants to take a look at it. If you have any questions for us after tonight, the easiest way to get in touch with us is to contact us by email at info@sebhousing.com. And then we also could be called. So the number is on your screen now, the 617 number, extension 1, if you have questions for us after the fact. If anybody has any questions about logistics or trouble viewing the screen, just let me know. Just some information to start out on who SEB Housing is, so who we are. We are an off-site affordable housing consultant group. We're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine applicants' eligibility in order to eventually run the lottery. So in the initial phases of this process, we're your main contact rather than the leasing office, but then further along in the process, that leasing office at Babcock Place would take over as your main point of contact. So there's a few different steps in the process. The first being to apply for the lottery and be found eligible for the affordable housing program itself based on that initial application. During that time, we're going to be, SEB Housing will be in touch with you. We can answer any questions you have on the application or any questions you might have on the affordable housing program, and we're going to run the lottery. The second step in the process is when you'll be in touch with the leasing office for lease eligibility, which is separate from the screenings that SEB Housing does. Their lease screening at Babcock Place could include, the typical credit, background, rental history checks, that sort of thing. And then the third and final step in the process would be once you're approved by the leasing office and you're found lease eligible to rent an apartment, you're then going to be directed back to SEB Housing. And at that point, that's when we're going to request verification of income, assets, and your tax documentation and that sort of thing that you've listed on your lottery application. And you'll have about 10 days to complete that process. But your initial application, you do not need to supply any income information up front. It's just that initial brief lottery application at this point. Just going to look in chat real quick. A question came in, are assets considered in affordability in addition to income? So for the rental opportunity, there's no asset limit. If you have assets that are generating income, that income is going to be added to your household income. If you have income generated assets, like I said, but if you have, $50,000 in the bank, that's not going to be considered towards the, or included, I should say, in your household income when we're determining whether or not you have too much income to apply for an affordable unit. And we'll get more into that later as well. So if you haven't already, if you go to our website, sebhousing.com, and you click on the affordable housing opportunities page, if you select, I want to rent, and then select Babcock Place, there's going to be a page specific to this property with downloadable versions of the application and information packet, as well as both a QR code and a jot form link, which is on your screen now, to the online application for this opportunity. We encourage you to complete that online application or to apply via the online app rather than sending it in to us, just because it's the quickest way and easiest to apply, and your application will be received right away. You'll get a confirmation email that it was submitted. If for any reason the online application isn't an option for you, you can download that lottery application or request a paper application to complete. You can submit that paper application to us in one of several ways. You can email or scan it to us. You can fax it to us. The fax number is on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail, or you can drop it off at our 24-hour drop box if you're in the Needham area. We're located at 257 Hillside Ave, and we do check that drop box each day. So you can choose whatever option is most convenient for you. But again, we do encourage you to use that online application just because it's super simple, it's quick and easy. This is a popular property, so you'll get a confirmation right away that it was received. It may take us a few days to confirm if your lottery application has been found eligible. So we do encourage you to submit the lottery application early. It is fairly brief, like I said. It should only take you about 10 minutes to complete, because we are not asking for any supporting income, asset, or tax documentation at this early stage, but that documentation will be required later on after the lottery if you're one of the top households on the waiting list. If you haven't applied already, the lottery applications are due by April 4th, and they need to be in by that date in order to be considered for the lottery. If you're sending your application in, same thing, we need to have it by April 4th. You do not need to be a resident of Brookline to apply for this lottery. There are several units that are going to have local preference for residents or employees of Brookline. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on, but it shouldn't dissuade you at all from applying for this if you don't live in Brookline. All right, so a little bit more information about the units and the property themselves. So they do have a website, babcockplace.com. So I put the link up here for you. If you haven't checked it out already, there are some more floor plans and renderings of the property listed there or available on the website if you want to check it out. The management company has let me know that the property itself and the units are not available for tours just yet, but they do estimate that in another few weeks they will be available for tours. And they expect that the first leases, the move-in dates, will be June 1st. So the lottery is going to be held at the end of next month, so the end of April. And soon after that, top households, if they're found eligible and they complete the process with both the leasing office and SEB housing, they could potentially sign a lease for June 1st. So that would be pretty much just around the corner. But again, the tours aren't yet available, but they will be hopefully later on this month, it sounded like. So from what I've seen, this looks like a beautiful building with lots of attention to detail. It is 5 stories. It is serviced by an elevator, and it's located near the Coolidge Corner area of Brookline. The property's actual address is 136 Babcock Street. If you're familiar with that area, you know that there's lots of shops and restaurants nearby, as well as the B and C branches of the Green Line. And the units themselves feature stainless steel appliances, in-unit laundry, central air conditioning and heating, and the affordable apartments are located throughout the building. So they're located throughout the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. The first floor is just a lobby and parking and mail facilities, that sort of thing. All the residences are on the 2nd through 5th floors. The units themselves are not identifiable as affordable in any way. And like I said, they're dispersed throughout the building. So tenants are going to be responsible for all utilities, which includes the expensive gas, heat, gas, hot water, and cooking, electricity, water, and sewer charges. Parking for this opportunity is not included in the rent, but parking spaces will be available on a first-come, first-served basis. The estimated cost for parking will be about an additional $300 per month if you're interested in that. Pets are allowed; they're just subject to restrictions. The 12 affordable apartments that are being made available through this lottery process will be rented to households that qualify as having a total annual household income at or below 80% of the Boston area median income. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those numbers actually are in a minute. So there are affordable studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments being offered. There are 5 total studio apartments that have 560 square feet. There's 3 1-bedroom apartments with 750 square feet. There's 2 2-bedroom apartments with 1,025 square feet. And there's 2 3-bedroom affordable units with 1,346 square feet. One of those studio units has features for persons with mobility impairment, so it is considered to be disabled accessible. And the affordable rents are not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So this means that the rents that you see on your screen and that I just listed would not change due to your income changes, because it's not subsidized housing. It's a different type of affordable housing program. The rents themselves are set using a formula that is based on HUD, which is Department of Housing and Community Development, HUD's area median income for the Brookline area. Those amounts change each year. And because of that, the rent might increase one time per year, and it typically occurs when HUD releases their area median income amounts each spring. There would always be advance notice to any tenants whenever there's a rent increase, and usually they're modest, usually between $25 and $75, and the rents would never change in the middle of your lease term. So if you're signing a lease this spring, these are the amounts that will be on those initial leases. So since there are going to be, we already know, since like I said, this is a popular lottery, there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants than there will be available units. The apartments are going to be made available through this lottery process that I'm going to just be describing. And they're only going to be available to households with annual incomes up to that 80% area median income that we're talking about for the Boston area. So I do have one question in chat again here. It's just a direct message. Just give me 1 second. Yep, so the question is that HUD is not going to be releasing the area median incomes this year until May. What would happen if this person submitted an application and they do believe that they would fall under the anticipated, probably higher income limits in May? So since this lottery application period closes on April 4th, you would need to qualify for the amounts that are publicized right now, so the 2022 amounts, to be able to qualify for this lottery. But if you think that the new area median income that could potentially go up in the next couple of months, if you think you would qualify for other lotteries based on the area median incomes going up, then I would just encourage you to apply for future lotteries, because the amount, like I said, you have to qualify for the lottery before the lottery date closes, and the amounts that are publicized right now is what you need to fall under. You can always fill out the online application and estimate your income to the best of your ability. If you know that you're over, you're going to get a notice back from us saying that you're over income. But if you think you might be close, I would say submit it with the lowball estimate. And then if you are one of the top households, we can take a look at your income at that point and see if you fall underneath. Any other questions before I go on to more about the eligibility criteria for the program? All right, so I just switched slides there. The current area median incomes are there for you. But just to go through the 4 eligibility requirements, if you have or plan to look at the information packet, which a lot of the information that I'm going over tonight is in that information packet that's available on our website. Page 7 lists these 4 eligibility requirements. The first is that households must have qualifying income and assets. And I'll talk more about those income parameters in just a few moments, but for this lottery, applicants must have household income that is below that 80% of AMI that's on your screen now. The second eligibility requirement is that households cannot own a home upon moving in. So if you own a home now, it would need to be sold prior to leasing an affordable unit at Babcock Place. The third eligibility requirement to keep in mind is household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So generally, this means that larger households will have priority for larger units. Also, you want to keep in mind for this particular lottery that 1-person households cannot live in 2-bedroom apartments, and 2-person households cannot live in 3-bedroom apartments unless a household member has a disability which requires a reasonable accommodation for an extra bedroom. So at least 1 person per 1 occupant per bedroom for this lottery. And page 7 again of the information packet talks a little bit more about household type as well. And then the fourth and final eligibility requirement, it doesn't come up often, but households cannot have financial interest in the development, so you can't be considered a related party. These units are being offered by Babcock Place LLC, so if you work for the developer or the management company, you may not be eligible for this lottery opportunity. So just to circle back on the first eligibility criteria to explain more, income and assets of the household. So the income limits, like I said, are listed on the screen now for 1 to 6-person households. The maximum income limits are set by household size. So you need to include the income of everyone who's going to be living in the unit. And these numbers are also on page 4 of the information packet. So you're going to see there that if you're a 1-person household, your total household annual income should be at or below the $78,300, and then it goes up from there. Since these are affordable units, they're going to be made available at rental prices that are lower than identical or very similar units within the building. And again, they'll only be offered to households that qualify under these income parameters. And just a reminder again, verification of your income is not required at this stage when you're submitting your lottery application, but you will, after you apply for the lottery, you'll be provided with the documentation requirements guide. So that will be sent to you after you have been approved for the lottery and you've submitted your application. And then we just suggest that you review that documentation requirements guide because it really details exactly what you're going to need to submit and what types of documentation we'll be asking for when and if you are invited to move forward after the lottery. So if you're one of the top people on the waiting list, you'll be invited forward to be lease screened with the leasing office and then eventually submit your income, asset, and tax documentation. So you're going to want to take a look at that guide so you can be prepared. It'll tell you, how many pay stubs we might need from you if you're employed, how many bank statements, that sort of thing. All households will also be required to submit your federal tax returns from the last year. So just keep all that in mind and take a look at that documentation requirements guide once you get it from us. And so although we don't need income verification from you now, I do still want to give you a basic overview of how your income will be calculated when we're talking about your total household income. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. All income for household members is included. So this is going to include bonuses and overtime, that sort of thing. The only exceptions to this are if you have a minor in your household, so someone that's under the age of 18 who is working and earning a wage, we're not going to count their income towards your total household income. And for dependent full-time students who are working, we're only going to count the first $480 of those wages when determining your eligibility. We are required to count gross income, so not net income. So it's the amount you make before taxes, although we know that you don't take home the full amount of your salary. We are required, according to the program, to count that gross income. And then how we calculate your income is not one size fits all, because everyone's income circumstances are unique. So we have some applicants and households who have a weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year. Other people are self-employed or working seasonally. So in those circumstances, we may need to look further into the past in order to project an anticipated income for the household for the next 12 months. Specifically, if you are self-employed, you are going to need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. Your business expenses will be taken into account as well. But for households who are not self-employed, we're not going to be able to count expenses. It will be your gross income that will be counting. There is a sample profit and loss statement on the certification application that would be sent to you following your lease eligibility. So in general, if you have any income that you have been making, we're going to have to assume that you're going to continue to make it going forward unless there's some sort of definitive documentation stating that you're no longer going to be earning that income source. So an example of documentation might be a written letter from your employer that you stopped working at a job and you're now working at a new one, or something saying that bonuses and overtime are not going to be paid in the coming year, that sort of thing. We're not permitted to accept statements from applicants though, so it would need to be something from your employer. So if your income, if all the documentation that we have is showing that you made about $80,000 last year, but you're anticipating making less this year, we're still going to need to count that $80,000 unless there's something definitive saying that your wages are going to be much different than they were last year, something from your employer. So some sources of income that are listed on the application that you just want to make sure you're counting or putting on your lottery application and your application further down the line, not just wages, but if you have any Social Security benefits, child support, alimony payments, retirement distributions, unemployment, workman's comp, that sort of thing, even periodic payments from friends or family, any assets that are generating income, you're going to want to make sure to put all of that on your application because it will be counted towards your total household income. There's no minimum income for the affordable housing program. However, most management teams, including the team at Babcock Place, want to be sure that any tenants, whether they're market rate or if they're renting affordable units, can afford the rent. So the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 3 times the total rent. And those amounts are listed in the information packet. But just for reference, for households looking to rent a studio apartment, the approximate minimum household income is $65,500. If you're looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, your household would need to make about $68,700. For a 2-bedroom, it's $80,400, and for a 3-bedroom, it's $90,700. And like I said, those are also listed in the information packet. Households, if you have a mobile voucher, so if you have a Section 8 voucher, MRVP voucher, something like that, you can disregard those minimum income amounts that I just mentioned because they don't apply to you. Because your voucher will be paying a certain amount of the rent. But Any applicant who doesn't have a housing voucher, your income needs to be between the minimum income floor and the maximum income limit. Also, I should circle back just for a second and say, if you do have a housing voucher, you want to still check in with your housing authority or the agency that issues your voucher to confirm that the rents at Babcock Place will be applicable and will be approved by your housing agency, because they would need to fall at or below the payment standards or the maximum rents for your subsidy program. So just keep that in mind. The only exception to these minimum income amounts would be if an applicant or a household is close to the minimum income amount, but you may have liquid assets that you might be able to access to afford the rent, your application could still be considered by the leasing office. So the minimum amounts are not as strictly enforced as the maximum income limits, which are a program requirement. So ultimately, the minimum income amount is the management or leasing team. It's at their discretion during the lease screening whether or not you meet that minimum threshold. So just keep that in mind. There is no asset limit. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. You could have a significant amount of assets in your bank accounts or stocks. You could be retired. That's all fine. Just keep in mind that we are still going to be collecting information eventually about your assets, even though there's no asset limit. And the reason for that is because any income generated from those assets does need to be counted as income. When you're thinking about assets and when you're filling out the application, if you are further along in the process and you need to write all this down for us or submit verification for us, we're going to be looking at not just checking and savings accounts, but the net cash value of any 401ks, 403bs, your Venmo or PayPal accounts count as assets these days, stocks, bonds, that sort of thing. We don't need verification of personal assets like cars or anything like that. There's a couple questions here, so I just want to circle back to it. And if you have any more, just let me know. Do you happen to know what the market rate prices will be to see the differential between the affordable rate? I do. I believe I have the updated market rate ones. I will look that up for you in just a minute. Do you count income differently for retirees? Was another question. And no, we would just be, like I said, if you have a significant amount of assets because you're retired, we would need to, see if there's any income generated from those assets. If you have Social Security payments or pensions coming in, we would just need statements to confirm what your total household income is. And I'm just real quick going to look up what the approximate market rents are for these units. They may not be exact, but I do believe I have an estimate. Just give me one moment. Oh, you know what? I may not have that. I do know that they are. Monica, if you're on the call and you want to chime in, I haven't seen if you're here or not. But if you know off the top of your head, I may not be able to pull that up very quickly here because it's not where I normally have it. But I do know that they are significantly reduced for Brookline. And I can get that.
This is
Sure.
Sorry, hi, it's Monica. I don't have that information readily available, but I can share it when I get back to the office tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah, and the person that, now let me just look in the chat here. Emily, you sent that to everyone. If you could put in your email address, I can share that with you. You can send me a direct message with your email address, Emily, and I can get that to you later on this week. Because that is good information to have just to see what the comparison is there. So that would be good. All right. So I'll continue on about the lottery itself. Again, if you have any other questions as we go along, feel free to type them in or chime in. So again, just going to encourage everyone, get your lottery application in early just to get the process started. You can apply for more than one unit size. So if you're interested in, for example, both a studio and a 1-bedroom, you should indicate that on your application. There's really no downside to doing so, but there is a potential downside to just applying for 1 unit size and then later deciding that you're maybe interested in more than 1 unit size. And the downside would be, now there's a long waiting list for a 1-bedroom apartment, and I only applied for a studio. So you may not have that opportunity to rent the 1-bedroom at that point. So if you think you might be interested in more than one, go ahead and put that on your application. Once you submit your lottery application, we're going to review it and we'll contact you if there's any information missing or if anything appears to be incorrect. If you are filling out an online application, you're going to get an error message if anything looks strange. So again, that's another kind of plus of doing the online application. You'll know if anything looks funky right off the bat. If you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent an email. If you don't have an email address, we'll send it to you by regular mail. But we're going to send you an email that has your lottery application number, and it's in the form of a series of 4 numbers. This is just the number that's going to be drawn in the lottery. It's meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name is not called out during the lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort at this point. It just corresponds with the order in which we received your application. So if you were the very first person to submit a complete application for Babcock Place, your number is going to be A.001. This letter or email is also going to confirm whether or not your household qualifies for local preference. So if you've self-reported on your application that you believe your household qualifies for local preference, it will indicate that. We don't need verification that your household qualifies for local preference at this early stage, but you will be required later on if you're one of the top households on one of the waiting lists following the lottery. You will need to provide verification that you either live in Brookline, you work for the town, or you work at a business located within the town. And a verification of that might be a copy of your current lease, a utility bill, a pay stub with your employer's address on it that is in Brookline, or if you are the guardian of a child that's attending Brookline Public Schools. And I mentioned this before too, but up to 70% of the affordable units at Babcock Place are going to have local preference, which means that some local preference households will get priority for those units compared to households who don't have local preference. That's not all the units though. And we don't know how many Brookline residents or people are qualifying for those units. So again, it shouldn't dissuade you from applying if you do not qualify for local preference. And there's more information about local preference as well on the last page of the information packet. This email that you receive after you are found eligible with your application number is also going to confirm the bedroom sizes that you applied for, as well as whether or not you indicated that your household needs a disabled accessible unit. Applicants who are in need of a disabled accessible unit will have priority for that unit over households who don't need those features. And then also I mentioned the documentation requirements guide that will be provided in this email that you receive with your lottery application number. So again, we just suggest that you review that guide so you're aware of the documentation that will eventually be required of you if you are one of these top households who's invited to move forward in the leasing process. If you submit an application and you're found to be ineligible for the lottery, so if you're over income, under income, whatever it might be, you're going to be informed by us via email as well. And you're encouraged to contact us at info@sebhousing.com with any questions. On your application, you will have also indicated your household type, and that's basically corresponds with your household size, but it's household type 1, 2, or 3. In some cases, smaller households may apply for larger units, but in general, larger households are going to have priority over smaller households for these larger units. So the information packet has a lot more information on household type and priority, how the waiting list will be sorted and that sort of thing. But as an example, a type 1 household, so an example of a type 1 household might be 2 adults who share a bedroom. They can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but all type 2 and type 3 households are going to have priority over that type 1 household on a waiting list. So meaning if you're looking at a waiting list, everybody that's at the top of the waiting list is going to be a type 2 or type 3 household if it's a type 2 or type 3 unit. And then anyone who qualifies as a type 1 household will be at the bottom of the waiting list. The lottery itself is going to be held virtually, April 25th at 6 p.m. So it's going to be held via Zoom, just like this information session. And then given the large number of applicants for this lottery, it is going to be held or drawn digitally. So that means that the lottery numbers are going to be randomized on a computer screen and the results will be shared with you by screen share, and we'll talk through them. Every lottery number is going to be included in the lottery, and every lottery number will be drawn or picked. I'm saying that because sometimes we think of lotteries and we think, there's just one winner per unit, but that's really not the case here. The purpose of the lottery is going to be to establish the waiting list. So while in general it is more beneficial if you are called early and your number is one of the top households picked, it still may not necessarily be the deciding factor on whether or not you're going to be able to move forward in the process to lease one of these units, because we do still need to sort the results by priority, unit or household type, and all of that first. So if the first person drawn in the lottery, the first lottery number is a type 1 household, and they've applied only for a 2-bedroom unit, they're still going to be behind all of the type 2 households on that 2-bedroom waiting list. And then also throughout the process, there could be households who were entered into the lottery that may be found ineligible by the leasing office, or they may ultimately decide not to rent a unit. Or further down the line, they could be found not to be income eligible by SEB housing. So letting you know that, because if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope of being able to move forward in the process. You may still be able to do so because several people in front of you could be found ineligible. So after the lottery, we're going to populate the waiting list. We're going to take that local preference and whether or not your household requires a disabled accessible unit into consideration. And we're going to do our best to send out the waiting list to all applicants as soon as possible. This would be sent via email as well. Typically, we're sending the waiting list and the follow-up no later than the day after the lottery. The list will be sent to all applicants by email or by regular mail, again, if you don't have an email address to provide to us. Just a couple more points and I'll get over to the questions here. So when reviewing that email, you're going to find your lottery application number and you can see where you fall on the waiting list. At that point, you're going to have a better idea as to whether or not you'll be moving on to the next step, which is to apply for the lease with Babcock Place's leasing office. So following the lottery, the top households from each waiting list will be put in touch with the management team, and your contact information will be provided to them as well. And that will begin that second step in the process of applying for the lease. You'll have about 5 days to connect with the management team and to initiate that lease screening process. This is for the top households on those waiting lists. As a reminder, SEB housing screens for lottery and affordable housing program eligibility. We're not screening your household for lease eligibility. The leasing office or the management company is doing that, just as they do for renters of market rate units. And this is a screening that, again, might include credit, background, rental history check, that sort of thing. We want you to be aware that the leasing office may invite more households to complete a lease screening than there are available units. So, for example, at Babcock Place, there are 3 affordable 1-bedroom units, but 6 or more households might be invited from the waiting list to complete that lease screening with the leasing office. This is typical of management companies. This is often done because the process of leasing apartments is sometimes slowed down by households who don't qualify for one reason or another. So it's really just to speed up the process. Immediately following the lottery, if you see that you're one of those top households on the waiting list, you don't want to automatically inform your current landlord that you're giving notice to move. And that's because you haven't yet been lease approved or submitted all of your income documentation to SEB Housing. So you haven't quite finished the process there. You want to make sure you're not jumping the gun yet. If you are lease approved by the leasing office, this is the point in the process that having a position near the top of the waiting list is particularly beneficial. If you're one of the top households, or if you are the top household on a waiting list, you're going to have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So if you're the top position on the 2-bedroom waiting list, you're going to have the first choice in reserving one of those affordable 2-bedroom units. This is true even if the person that's second, that's right behind you on the waiting list, happens to complete their lease eligibility screening first. The management team is still going to honor the order of the waiting list. So the first person on the waiting list has first choice at units, and so on down the line. So once you've reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office is going to notify us at SEB Housing, and then we will contact you to coordinate the submission of all of your income, asset, and tax documentation as the final step to confirm your eligibility for the affordable housing program. So hopefully by that point, you've been able to gather some of the documentation that you have reviewed from the documentation requirements guide, and you'll have about 10 days to submit the information that we need. We'll work with you throughout the process. There's a lot of information to submit, so if you're not able to provide all of the information that's required on the first attempt, you'll be sent an incomplete notice and be given another chance to complete your application. So don't worry about getting everything in right away. We will work with you on that. Once SEB Housing has approved your file, we're going to notify you. And then eligible households will then be able to sign leases and establish move-in dates with the leasing office. So that would be the last step in the process. Our program certifications are good for 6 months. So if for any reason your move-in date is more than 6 months after you complete the application process with us, just a little disclaimer here, you might need to submit updated income documentation to us. But like I said, the first units are available for leases starting June 1st. So that may not be in the cards here. Just going to look real quick at chat because I have a few things here. Yep, a few people are just looking for the market rate. So I'm going to take down those email addresses afterwards. And then there's one other message here. 2 adults, 2 income sources, and 1 child apply for a 2-bedroom, but there is a chance a 3-bedroom be needed for a new child. Do you advise applying for 2 and 3? Yep, I mean, any apartment size that you're eligible for that you think you might be interested in, I would say apply for it. If you're at the top of that list and the time comes and you know what, you don't need a 2-bedroom, you actually need a 3, you can pass on the 2-bedroom and still remain on the 3-bedroom waiting list. So I would definitely apply for anything, any bedroom size that you think you might be interested in when you're submitting that lottery application, because it is, like I said, very early in the process still. And yes, I would apply for the larger ones there. If I need to sell a house or condo based on knowing if I got an apartment, how do I deal with that? So like I said, if you own a condo or home right now, you would need to be off the deed by the time you're signing the lease for an affordable rental unit at Babcock. You know, I realize that might take some time if it's not listed yet. So it may be a little tight for this lottery, but that is what would need to happen in order to be eligible for this lottery. If you applied and you disclosed that you own a home on your lease application, you could still be approved for the lottery. It would just be a conditional approval, meaning that you would have to, the condition being that you need to have sold your property before leasing an apartment at Babcock Place. So, you know, if you sell it within the next 3 or 4 months and you haven't been called up from the waiting list yet, it could still work out. So not an ideal situation, obviously, but that is how it works. How many accessible units are there? There's just the one studio apartment that is disabled accessible. I know I mentioned that quickly, but it was a while back now. Yep, just one studio apartment does have, is considered disabled accessible at this property. All right, just a couple more things here that I wanted to get through. So we're at the point now where you were one of the top households, you signed a lease, you moved in. Once you're leased, you are done with income screenings until the lease renewal date. So we hope that you love the unit that you've leased and you want to continue living there before the first or after the first year of the lease. If you do, you would need to recertify your income with the leasing office prior to your lease renewal. If your income has increased and is now above that 80% of AMI amount that you initially qualified under, that's fine. Households remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment as long as the household income doesn't exceed 140% of the current year's AMI. So if AMI goes up in May, which it probably will, these numbers might change a little bit, but to give you an idea of what that means, page 14 of the information packet lists the 140% figures for the different household sizes. As an example, if you're a household of 2, 80%, you would have qualified at the 80% amount for this lottery, which is $89,500. That same 2-person family can make up to $125,300 at the time of the recertification in order to remain eligible for the rental unit. So your income can increase quite substantially while you're living there within the first year, which is a good thing. I have one other question here. Maybe not. How many accessible units are available in the entire building? I do not know. I don't have that on me right now, but in terms of accessible, affordable units, it's just that one studio. I'm just going to take a look at these email addresses real quick and get those down. I'm not going to take a screenshot. But if anyone else has any questions, again, the best way to apply, I'm going to put it on the first slide again here, is to go to that online application. There's the QR code or the JOT form link that's on Babcock's listing on our website as well. And I can also put it in the chat here if you would like that. Maybe not. If anybody's interested in that, I can do that as well, just so you have it handy. Any other questions before I let you go? April 4th is the deadline. Have a lot of applications already, but again, that shouldn't dissuade you from applying. Just writing down these. And then just one more message here. Oh yeah, one other person. All right, and if that's it, again, really hope that you're interested in applying. Looks like a great opportunity, and you can find the application and the information packet on our website. If you have any questions after tonight that you think of, info@scbhousing.com is the easiest way to get in touch with us, but we do have a message line as well at that 617 number, 617-782-6900 extension 1, that you can contact us at if you'd prefer to speak with someone. All right, if that's it, thank you for joining us tonight, and I appreciate it. Have a good night.